You're watching 38 IZ videos. This is Val Tapia. Today's musical guest is actually a guest who we had a year ago, and it's such a pleasure talking to him. Jazz composer, jazz musician, jazz producer, and storyteller extraordinaire, Billy Cobham. He's going to be coming back to the Valley doing what's called the Art of the Rhythm Section Retreat. And that takes place at the Mesa Art Center starting July 22nd through Friday, July 27th. On July 28th, he'll culminate that week's events with Billy Cobham's Crosswinds project, live Saturday, July 28th at 7:30 p.m., again at the Mesa Art Center. And just to talk so much, talking about a 50-year career, we're going to pick little parts and talk about the retreat. So without further ado, via Skype from Switzerland, Mr. Billy Cobham. And for this, the show you're going to be playing, the performance on Saturday, July 28th, that's the culmination of the entire retreat. Now it's Billy Cobham and the Crosswinds Project. Give us a little background on that. And if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be featuring the second album you did in 1974, Crosswinds, pretty prominently in this set.
Yes. The Crosswinds Project is made up of a very unique woodwind player named Paul Hansen, who plays bassoon and tenor sax and soprano sax. With Paul, I brought back Tim Landers, who's a bass player that I've used from the band that I had back in the 80s called Glass Menagerie. Mm-hmm. And then Tim has moved to Los Angeles and became A-listed studio player. And after some time has decided that he wanted to come out and spell his days in the studio by just working with me. Then we have the very, very, very special guitarist named Farid Haq, who used to play with Joe Zawinul and has a very special approach to playing because he's a classical guitarist and flamenco. He has a family background that goes from Pakistan to Chile to the United States. He brought up in Chicago. And so when he plays, the funk is kind of complicated. It's just like about three different ways of doing the same thing, and it all comes together through him in a way that shows how much he is very supportive, and at the same time can give you a song, a story through every note that he plays. Playing keyboards is one of the most underrated keyboard players I've ever come across. His name is Scott Tibbs, and he's worked with a lot of people. He was brought up in Las Vegas. He's in the studios of Los Angeles. He's worked with Omar Hakim. That's where I found him a few years ago, working in the Leverkusen Jazz Festival, supporting Omar. And I just sort of filed it away. And as it turned out, Scott Tibbs is one of the guys responsible for the development of much of the Roland keyboard products that we play today. The System 8 and things like this, it's all about him. And so to have Scott on line with me right now is a major, major plus. That all of the guys have university training. Not that Dean and Rick and Dean Brown and Rick Farabracci, Jerry Atkins did not. But it's a different approach. And playing the Crosswinds material with these individuals is showing that in that way. Having the bassoon, it can't hurt, man. It's just something out of left field because it's not just there for show. Paul Hansen, as you will see and hear eventually, one way or another, is a force to be reckoned with. So I feel that what I have to bring to the table, which is also something that we teach at the Art of the Rhythm Section Retreat, we're not teaching it by talking it. We're walking the walk mostly in everything that we do. And one is that you bring something to the table, not just for your colleagues to do and to acknowledge, but also for those who listen to you. And if you just stay and sit back on your laurels and do the same thing over and over again, then you'll see probably the same people in less and less capacity, or I shouldn't say less and less amounts at your performances, because they already know what you're going to do. And what you want to do is always bring something that everybody can go, really? I didn't know that. Through the music. And that's what this is all about.
Side one of Crosswinds, I believe it's like 17 or 18 minutes. And it's in subsets, of course. Like I said, how does that come across live? And will we hear side one of that, of Crosswinds?
Spanish Moss? Yes,
Yes.
you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if anything, it's probably longer now.
Right. So, yeah, you definitely don't stick.
No, it's there.
Right.
You know, it's entire. I don't think it's going to be as long because there's a lot, but there's a lot of moving parts that did not make that last record. Because when I made Spanish Moss, I had a theme, and I didn't have much more. But I knew that I if I don't record this thing, I'll miss my shot. Mm-hmm. And seriously, it took me until about a year ago to record it again, or to even incorporate it into my my book of material for the band. I was a little bit strange about it at first. I said, man, I don't know what I'm. And all of a sudden, things grew. And one of the things about music is that you have to. It has to reflect who you are and your basic history.
Right.
And when you hear a lot of players play just one A section of a tune and then a B section of a tune and then everybody goes in solos, fundamentally that's all they knew how to do. I mean, the music never lies.
Right.
But if you're willing to wait and invest some time in experiences on and off stage, eventually, if you play that tune again and you decide to arrange it in a different way, you'll come to the realization that, wow, there's more that I know now about how I could make this composition deeper, for lack of a better term, and provide more scope as to who I am and where I came from based on that. And that's what's happened with Spanish Moss.
Sounds good. We're speaking with Billy Cobham, and Billy Cobham and the Crosswinds Project will be playing on Saturday, July 28th at the beautiful Mesa Arts Center. Showtime is 7:30. It's the culmination of a week-long retreat called the Art of the Rhythm Section Retreat. And you can sign up at mesaartcenter.com, and it'll give you all the information needed. And he's given us a little bit of a sneak peek of what to expect. And once again, you can go to mesaartcenter.com for more information. You're doing something new, actually a second performance, Billy, on Wednesday, July 25th, and this is called The Art of Three in Conversation and Song. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and the origins of doing that?
Okay, a short version of that is the history of that those group of people. We've worked together since 1967, off and on, more off than on, right. And that's Ron Carter, bass. Whose curriculum vitae, you can say, okay, one of the highlights is Miles Davis. Okay, he was in that band with Tony Williams and Herbie Hancock and George Coleman at the beginning. Wow. Miles, and and then of course Wayne Shorter came in afterwards. All right, then there's Kenny Barron, who's played with Dizzy Gillespie and Stan Getz, amongst thousands of other people. They're both very, very, very well established in the education environment. And my go-to people when it comes to direction, experiences that we've had. And so one day I had an idea back around 2001 or thereabouts. And I called Ron and said, hey, what you doing? Would you come to Italy and work with me on about 2 or 3 other dates? And he said, okay. Came over. We got Kenny, who was at the time, I think, in Uruguay. And we flew in. And the whole objective of the project was to just play what we felt, what we knew as a group. It turns out when Ron asked Kenny, said, what? Can you write down some tunes and see? Kenny came off the plane from Uruguay with 150 titles that we all were familiar with, and that was just the tip of the iceberg, because in that trio, I learned repertoire. The trio represents what used to happen in New York City back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, every night, including Sunday, where there might be a matinee even, and about 3 or 4 shows, and 4 or 5 shows a night.
Wow.
Where we played what would be considered all of the standard songs, My Funny Valentine, The Very Thought of You, and all of this, every which way but up. I mean, it was like changing keys, feeling of patterns, Latin, bossa, boogaloo, anything. But it was just, that's what a band did in the club for 6 weeks, and every night. So for me, it was school beyond school. And then that was the last thing you did if you were a working musician, generally speaking, every day for that period. Took another couple of weeks off once you left that gig. And more than likely, you might end up in another club in New York City doing the same thing again. So sometimes many of us didn't leave New York City it would be easy to not go any place for 2-3 years.
Wow.
Because New York City had so many clubs.
Right.
You had the 5 Spot, the Half Note, the Cotton Club, Slugs in the Far East. You had the Village Gate, the Village Vanguard, and it went on and on and on. And always somebody was coming to town who needed a band. And so that night, that's what you did. In the daytime, if you were lucky, you were either in the pit, or New York, maybe not in the orchestra pit, but in a recording studio somewhere in town, of which there were a few hundred studios, and every one of them was busy, because what you came to New York to do was record with studio musicians. And that's what that was what I was after. So at the time I was young enough to just be hungry enough to just wait to see if someone like Grady Tate or Mel Lewis or many of the other, O.C. Johnson, anybody that would need a sub would call, And there were certain places where you went and you just hung out waiting to see if the phone would ring, and somebody said, "No, man, I can't make it. Call Billy." They'd say, "On pain of death." Okay, you're at A&R 48th Street, but it's 10 o'clock, or even a jingle, an hour with a possible 20, which is a radio or a TV jingle. Do this, and if you do it well, the rest didn't need to be said. If you did the right thing, if you were on time enough to make the project happen and make them look good, chances are you're going to work again. And the thank you came in a phone call that said, "Are you free for this?" Not thank you. Okay, all of that came out of this, and this is how the trio came together. This is how I met these guys, interacting with them. They gave me ideas for my Art of the Rhythm section retreat. I filed them. The great Chris White, who was one of the guys who helped me with this in the very beginning. I studied with him, and Ed Thigpen and Grady Tate. They would come and they would show me stuff. And I thought, and someday I'd like to do this on my own and try to push the whole thing forward, pay it forward for those who were coming up. So here we are. And with the Art of the Rhythm section retreat, we have this concert where Ron and Kenny and I for 90 minutes will discuss how all of this happened back in the day and how it applies to what happens now, and why it's important to continue to follow certain basic tenets of playing amongst your colleagues and offering things that are worthwhile in terms of from the musical precision.
Right. And that is, to clarify, it is conversation and performance that night, correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So what we do is we'll play a little bit, and then we'll say, can anybody, for me, I might say, what can anybody take from this right now? What did you see us do? Or it might be that Ron may say, what I did from my station at base was X, Y, and Z. Why do you think that might be?
Awesome. Yeah, sounds very cool. To go back, since you brought up pretty much the late 60s, prior to that, you actually did a 3-year period with the U.S. Army Band. How did that,
Yes, sir.
and it kind of reminds me of what you're doing at the retreat, but at that point, how did that help with your musical development when you became a recording artist?
First word, discipline. That's very, very important. When you're a recording artist working for someone, if that's what you're going to do, when someone engages you for something, they say, we have a recording session at XYZ studio on 57th Street, at the Great Northern, let's say. And it starts at 10. It's a 3-hour session. Are you free? You say yes. It's all verbal, by the way. I said, okay. Session starts there. You're in the union. Everybody gets the same amount of money. You don't negotiate it. You're only happy you got a gig. The next thing you know, what you have to be is not there at 10 o'clock. You have to be there at 9 o'clock if you're the drummer or any musician, because you have to prepare to play at 10. In the Army, fundamentally the same thing. We had certain commitments that were made on our behalf, and the whole objective was to be able to be ready for the first note to play at that particular time when the baton from the warrant officer came down, whomever was conducting us. And this is, for young people, not necessarily ever a good situation, because it's in contrast to the fact that we're all growing up saying, I'm the best in my own possible world, and I'm going to show everybody that I don't need them until I do, which is completely needs to be controlled. It needs to be brought into perspective. And that's what the military did for me a lot.
Interesting. And so I want to go a little forward now. There's a very cool record you did. It was under the moniker the Billy Cobham and the George Duke Band, and live on tour in Europe, 1976. Hip Pockets. That's funk. That's funk to the max. Let's put it that way. How did that record come to play, and what was it like playing with George Duke at that time?
It was a natural. I had George play on the Crosswinds album.
Right.
He's on maybe 2 or 3 other of my own personal records, mm-hmm. and of which the names I can't even remember at the moment. But what was so special about him is that he had this personality of positiveness. Every note that he played was jovial. Even if it was a ballad, it had a feeling of a heart and experience, things that he'd gone through. And as I said before, the music never lies.
Right.
George did not have an exactly wonderful life, quietly as it's kept. And every note that he played reflected that. It was Academy Award, as far as I was concerned, and I respected it tremendously. Being able to work with him that way made it easier for me to play. Mm-hmm. Because all I had to do was match up with what he was playing, because I knew that whatever he was playing was from the heart. And that's not easy. It's not, and it's to be considered a very special trait of any artist, to let their guard down and tell everybody, this is who I am right now. And it's based on where I was before. And this is where I'd like to take you with all of that information. That's not easy, but it's possible.
Awesome. We're speaking with Billy Cobham, master composer, master drummer, and master storyteller. Billy Cobham will be in town on Saturday, July 28th. Billy Cobham's Crosswinds Project. The show starts at 7:30 at the Mesa Arts Center. The entire week of July 22nd, he'll also feature the Art of the Rhythm Section retreat, and that's July 22nd through the 27th, and it's from 10 to 5 that week, and tickets are available at the mesaartcenter.com. And one more time, the Art of Three in Conversation and Song. That's on Wednesday, July 25th at 7:30, again at the Mesa Arts Center. Tickets are available for all 3 events, mesaartcenter.com/Billy Cobham Retreat. And hopefully I got everything in there, Billy, to get going on this.
One other person I'd like to just mention, And that's a guy by the name of Lee Oscar. And Lee is, he comes from the Eric Burden War days and the Lowrider Band and all of that. And he's my, I've got a real special thing with him in terms of groove. He has a way of playing. It's not fast. It's just consistent, and it tells you a whole lot of how that harmonica can fit into anything. If you play harmonica, you can play accordion. As long as the security of the music, the factor is at a consistent level, the groove will stay the same. Intense, emotional. Doesn't mean it has to be loud. Right. This has to make you feel good and make you move. That's why we have Lee Oscar working with us. And he's conducting a class with me on the Friday before the concert in the morning hours. It's Lee Oscar Day for us, and we'll be talking about a lot of stuff that had to do with a lot of the tunes that he wrote and why he wrote them and where it came from. And that's important.
Awesome. And one more project I want to go before I let you go. Billy, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure having you and speaking to you. I learned so much talking to you, as our viewers do as well. One project that was a very interesting one you did was, I want to say, late 80, early 81. You released 2 albums with a band called Bobby and the Midnights. Give us a little bit of a background on that. And some of our viewers may know that that band included Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead. And it was weird to hear, because if nothing else, those records were a sign of the times, and it was very, for lack of a better term, radio friendly. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. And I think that why I wanted to be involved in that is because of Alphonso Johnson and Bobby Cochran, who I think Bobby crossed over from the rockabilly side into the situation with me and Alfonso, and then there was Brent Midland, and who great voice, great keyboard player, and Ware, great writer, personality. I thought it was really doable. It was short-lived, but it was supposed to be. We all came from some very, very strong roots in different areas of music that are all equally respected. And I thought it would, what a lot of fun to just do that. I think we did a couple of records, man. It was a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let me let you go. Thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to seeing you the week of July 22nd for all 3 activities: the Art of the Rhythm Section Retreat 2018, the Art of 3 in Conversation and Song, and the Billy Cobham and the Crosswinds Project. All 3, it should be a fantastic week, and we look forward to your return.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot, Val.
Right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.